she was Bill's sister, so William's
Yeah.
sister.
Right. And she never married.
And Vivian.
Well, Cussy came first.
Okay, Cussy.
Yeah. Louis.
Was another brother?
Yeah. His right name was Louis.
Now, did you spell it L-E-W or L-O-U-O?
Louis.
And then Vivian was a sister?
Yes.
So Vivian and Zeus were sisters.
Yeah. And Vin.
And Vin and Cussy and then Morin?
Morin was my dad's brother too.
He was the youngest.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Who did Vivian marry? Edgar?
No. Aunt Grace was married to Edgar.
Oh.
Skinner. Lloyd Skinner.
Okay. And Morin was the brother. Who did Morin marry?
Yeah, Lillian, oh boy, I can't think of her maiden name. She was from Missouri. She's still got quite a southern accent. I can't think of her maiden name right now. Then my dad's other two sisters, the older ones. Blanche, the one we called Aunt Tom.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about Aunt Tom. I didn't know. Aunt Tom.
She was the oldest one in the family. She was older than my dad. They're the ones that lived close by, you know, that they had the
Yeah. And who did Aunt Tom marry?
Davis, Bert Davis.
Okay.
And
Davis. There were some Davises. Bobby Davis?
Then, yeah, that was her son.
Cussy. Or
Bobby and well, Killy, that
Killy.
was a nickname. His name was terrible. Can't think of his name right now. His right name.
We can come back to that.
And there was
Should be one more now.
Grace.
Aunt Grace.
Oh, Grace.
Yeah. She was married to Edgar Fehrenbach.
No, I always heard the name Grace Davis. Who was Grace? Was that another Grace?
That was my Aunt Tom's daughter.
Oh, okay.
They had 2 girls and 2 boys.
Grace married who?
Edgar Fehrenbach.
Edgar. Sure, I'm going to spell that. Now, there was another Fehrenbach.
Well, then there are 2 boys, Bill and Herrick.
Herrick. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how did that Herrick Fehrenbach, was that?
He's named after his mother's maiden name.
Okay. All right. And he was the guy that we rented the movies from all the
Yes,
time, wasn't he?
yeah.
Okay.
He's still living
Is
up
he?
in I don't know if it's Mackinac City or. And Bill's down in Texas, I think.
Didn't Herrick also raise beagles?
Yeah, he did for Kellogg a couple or 3 years for experiment.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
The other Grace Davis was the daughter of Aunt Tom.
Yeah,
and
right.
Bert.
Yeah.
Who was the fourth child in that family?
Mary Ellen. Yeah.
Alright. So there were, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 girls and 2 boys in that family? So 7?
Three boys. Well, 3 boys with my dad.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. And they were all the children of Charles Baumgarten, Papa Baumgarten.
No. They were children of Louis and
Oh, I'm sorry,
Mary
Louis
Louise
Herrick.
Rich.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
No, my mother just had one sister,
What was her name?
Florance. She was married to Joe Kelly.
Did we ever meet them?
I don't think so. One time, didn't Uncle Joe come to the house, or we went over there? He was going to give us Charles's electric train, and then when they moved it, it had been stolen out of their garage. It was a beautiful thing. The coaches were that big.
Lionel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was going to give it to us. They were moving from my dad's house on 4th Street over to Van Buren. And they had put some stuff in the garage prior to moving it. And he had offered me the train because...
Now, who was this? This was your
This was my...
your mother's sister?
Uh-huh.
Agatha Baumgarten. Florence Baumgarten. And she married who?
She married Joe Kelly.
Does the name Kelly come up anymore?
Oh, Agatha Kelly might have been mentioned a few
Yeah,
times.
you remember at the last St. James reunion, you know, we told you we met her?
No.
I think you and Carol came there that day for a few minutes.
Yeah, we were at the reunion, but I don't remember who you're talking about.
We hadn't seen her in years. She lives in Allen Park where Jimmy does.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, you had 3 half-sisters and a half-brother, right?
Right.
And that was
Kathleen
Kathleen.
and Bill. Nanette. And Joan.
Okay. And their mother's name was what?
Beatrice.
Okay.
Her last name was Steele, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
Steve.
E-E-L-E.
Okay, now can you remember beyond Louis and Mary Louise Warren's, can you remember their parents or your dad's, let me see here, your dad's
Who was Mimir?
Mimir was my grandmother's mother.
That's who you're asking about.
Oh, yeah.
but you don't remember your grandmother's name.
What?
Her-
Charles Baumgarten's wife's name.
No, not her first name. Not any name, really.
You don't remember her maiden name either.
Mm-mm.
I thought we got that from you one time.
I thought it was Phillips, but I'm not too sure about that.
Oh, that's right. That's what you told me.
Yeah.
I thought it was Phillips. Well, that's,
somehow they were related, but I just don't know how.
okay.
I always said it was always going to talk to Aunt Florence because she knew Bill Phillips. Do you remember Bill Phillips at all?
No.
He was a no good brat.
Who were the Savages? How did they come in?
Well, that's Viv's children, Marion Savage. and
Marion Skinner married,
Darcy?
Darcy Savage, yeah.
Okay.
And she's the daughter of Vivian Skinner. And then they had, he had a brother, or she had a brother, I should say, Donald. He's been dead. Geez, he's been dead quite a few years already, hasn't he? I've asked Mary and Darcy to our dinner.
Oh,
She's,
okay.
she's as close to me as,
So Marion is your cousin, right?
yeah, first cousin. She worked for your dad in the store for a little while, didn't she?
mhm.
Have I missed anybody?
Not that I can think of, not on my side anyway.
Okay, let me see if I can structure this better this time, so I can follow what I'm doing here. Your dad was
Edgar
Edgar.
George.
And your mother was Angeline
Junschminka.
Schminka.
JenCZMIONKA.
And your grandfather on your father's side.
George Rich.
And your grandmother?
Catherine. Yeah,
Yeah.
Catherine.
That's in that pamphlet you were looking at the
Oh,
other day.
that's right. Yeah. And her maiden name?
Is it on that list?
Oh, should be.
You know that you got that tape running all this time?
Yeah.
Well, didn't you give that list to Carol?
No, I have two of them.
Yeah, I think we have the list.
Catherine.
Well, it doesn't give. Yeah, Catherine Francis.
And does it go beyond that?
No. Then
It
it
starts
just-
with George, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1860.
Do you
George
remember?
H.
Okay. Do you remember beyond George? Beyond your grandfather? Do you remember anything? Do you remember where George came from?
Mm-mm.
Where was your dad born?
I think Detroit.
Where were you born?
Where in Detroit?
You were born in Detroit. You remember when you moved to Bay City?
Well, I was about 5.
And then you stayed here after. Do you remember your parents talking about when their ancestors came over from Europe?
Well, just my mother was the only one in her family that was born in this country. The rest were all born in Poland.
And how many siblings did she have?
Two brothers and one sister.
Two brothers. Do you remember the name?
Joseph, Vincent.
Did he have a nickname?
Uncle
Is that
Beats.
Beats?
Vitzek, yeah. It's, and Josephine.
Did we ever meet any of those?
Oh, yeah, well, see, Uncle Beats was the last survivor. You must have met him. He's the one that had the bicycle.
I heard stories about him. How he used to pick mushrooms by the
Yeah.
bushel and carry them on his
Yeah.
bicycle and all that.
Grandma
No,
used to
I-
can him.
Well, now, would you remember when Virginia got married?
No.
I know he was alive then.
Well, yeah, wasn't the reception, was it in Saginaw?
No, that was Uncle Dick.
Oh.
The reception for Virginia was right at the house, wasn't it?
No, then I don't remember. Do you remember your dad's brothers and sisters?
Oh, yeah. There was Roland. And just trying to think of the order. Well, George.
Oh, Edgar George, yeah, was your dad. He was next.
Well, but Uncle George was,
Yeah, but
Is this the Uncle George we used to see at the reunion?
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And Lloyd.
Yeah.
And Francis.
Yeah, I remember him.
And Walter, he died.
I don't remember what.
He died in 1901.
Oh, there were just 6 boys in the family? No sisters?
Yeah. So,
Wonder why they haven't got. Wonder why they haven't got Virginia's date, the date she got married.
Probably didn't have it. Were all of your dad's siblings born in the United States?
yes. I'd say they were all born in Detroit.
Or,
Well, I'm not sure. Because they did live in Bay City at the time my dad and mother were single. They lived in Bay City then. But as to whether they were born in Bay City or Detroit, I'm not sure. I'm assuming it was Detroit.
now, what I'm wondering about is why you were born in Detroit. Did the whole clan move up from Detroit at one time? Did all these guys move up to Bay City?
No, see, they were living in Bay City before my dad and mother got married.
Well, then they moved to Detroit,
Mhm.
and that's where you were born,
Yeah.
and then they moved back up here. Oh, okay. What do you remember about your grandmother, Catherine?
Nothing.
You know anything about her family or where they came from? Or anything?
Well, just that the Cawcall and Francis were her two brothers,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Frank and Pete, Frank and Bill.
She didn't die till 1932.
Who?
Catherine.
Pete was a single brother. He never married, but he lived with them in Concord.
Pete?
Or not Pete, Bill.
Bill?
And Pete was another brother. And he lived in Port Huron.
Okay. Is that everybody that you can think of?
Yeah.
And where are these names like Norm Sovey and Kubeski and some of these? Who was the guy that you built the sailboat with?
Norm Gabeski.
Kubeski. Okay. He was just a friend of yours
They
from
were
school?
Friends, yeah. Norm never went to St. James. He went to Central. But I don't know how I actually met him. I think through neighborhood friends.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, where did he go to school in the grade school?
Probably St. Stan.
Oh, okay.
Now, I have to go down to get some blood work or go into Bay City for that. So this is a good chance, while the two Marys are here, Mary Florance and Mary Louise, to find out what things were like in the Banks area, the other side of the river, Bay City, where I rescued my wife from back in the 40s. Yeah. See you later.
Okay.
Why don't we start? You can go anywhere you want with this, but just to get us started, Ma, you were born in 1915, right?
Right.
Okay. And Mary, you were born in what year?
1917.
1917. And as a result, we got into World War I. Is that basically what happened?
1917, the war was just over.
Yeah,
Didn't America get in 1917?
I think so, Mary, because that's when our mother died. She was pregnant, and that's when all the pregnant women were dying with the epidemic flu.
Mother died 1920.
Yeah, the flu epidemic was 1919.
1919.
But when
But we were in war.
when
in
the they
17.
said when the soldiers came back, they brought that flu with them.
Right.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm ahead of the story that for his answer.
But
Yeah,
that's-
we went into the war in what? Something of 1917. I
Yeah.
forget the month,
Yes.
but we weren't in it as long as we were for the Second World War.
It was just a couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was almost at the end of the war when that epidemic took place,
Yeah.
wasn't it? That flu epidemic.
Yeah,
Do you remember any of that? Or were you too young?
I was too young. I mean, I remember, at least I remember seeing my mother, because they didn't take the dead people to a funeral home then and they figured she had died from that flu too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were living on 4th Street then, and I remember seeing her in her casket there's a big bay window in the front of our house. And they said, you know, Ma and Benny and them said I didn't see her, but I'm sure somebody. I think my grandfather Baumgarten must have taken me, because he was just devastated when my mother died. He just couldn't take it. I know one time when he came to the house and to see us, to Ma Herrick's house, and she offered him some comfort, you know. And he says, "Oh no, there is no God." He was just that
Yeah,
devastated.
Mama Harriet said the Lord must have, for a reason, took these little girls' mother.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't think God had anything to do with
Yeah.
it. That was his response. But I don't know if I was certainly too young to remember, and I don't know if I just heard you describe her being in that bay window, but I almost think that I saw her. Now, it might be because you described it so well, but I see the bay window on the 4th Street house, and I thought I saw her too, but it might be because you so vividly
Yeah,
described
yeah.
it. But
See,
it
she
just
wasn't even 3 years old.
Yeah, you were just about 4 or 5. Or,
Yeah,
I was, she
5.
died in January, and I would have been 5 in August.
August.
okay.
But kids read
What was
now.
the address on 4th? Do you remember?
1417 or something like that it was.
So down around 3rd Street, or I mean around Hampton,
It was
between Lincoln and Johnson.
No, it was between, yeah, Dr. Slattery lived on Lincoln Street
Lincoln.
then, and I remember he lived just around the corner on Lincoln from us on 4th Street. So it was between,
Now, who owned that house?
my dad owned that house,
Billy Harry.
yeah.
Okay. Do either of you remember learning to read? This is kind of off the subject here, but I heard somebody recently interviewing a writer, and he asked him if he learned how to read because he says he had never heard of anybody who remembered learning to read, except an adult. But when we were children, I remember it. I remember
Do you
it.
really?
Yeah, but
Well, I can remember when we first went to school, my grandmother thought it was too far for me to walk to go from her house to visitation to the Catholic school. So I was put in what they didn't call it kindergarten then, it was like the first half of, and then I was promoted to the C, what they called the C class. And I remember we had great big charts with sounds on it, and then we learned words. And then by the time I got to the 1st grade, I remember we had a what we called our primer book, and learned how to read in it. Now that was at visitation
where were you living at that time?
with Mon Paharic on Keystone Street.
Mary Louise never went to Tromboy School, did you?
I did, yeah,
Or
for
did
that
you?
C class deal.
Oh, okay. I went to Tromboy School, and you and Warren used to get at me all the time because I wasn't in Catholic school, and I wouldn't know anything anyway because I went to
they
Tromboy
kept you there the
School.
1st year.
I was what they called in the baby room.
Yeah,
We called
yeah.
it the baby room, not a kindergarten in those days. But I remember having little books, like I saw Dick Run and
Yeah.
that kind. Now that's my first recollection of learning how to read.
Yeah.
And I more learned it not with the alphabet like ABC. I learned it with words. You know, I saw Dick Run and little dog kind of things with pictures to support the sentence structure. And that's the way. So I began to learn not sounding words even.
Well, they had pre-kindergarten then,
Yeah,
eh?
well,
Or pre-1st grade.
yeah, there was no kindergarten as such. It was pre-1st grade.
grade. And that's where we started to learn. But we dealt mostly with playthings. We made clay things, and we had little sticks that we made houses with, and that kind of thing.
So a lot of, I think my generation thinks that all that is a product of our generation. That they never had pre-1st back
Oh, yeah.
in your day.
And we had a huge chart with the ABCs on, and every page, you know, like you had the A page and sounds and words,
Yeah.
and then we went right through the alphabet. Oh yeah.
Let's talk about your family tree a little bit. Your father was William Herrick, right?
Yeah.
And your mother was
Agatha Baumgarten.
and she died in 1919 from the flu.
1920, January
1920? Oh.
January 1920 she died.
You know, we lost more people to the flu epidemic than to the